Hey guys, what is up? My name is Lannon and welcome to the Jersey Zone. So today I'm going to be doing my predictions on where I think each team is going to finish in the North Division, or what most people are going to call it the Canadian Division. Now before we do get into this video, I do want to quickly say that these are just my opinions. I don't claim to know everything about every single team. I don't claim to know like all of their depth players or all of their rookies or anything like that. So I do just want to say that this is just my opinion. It might be completely wrong, and at the end of the season, I'm kind of expecting it to be just completely off and not even close to being right at all. I've tried to do predictions in the past and they've just been completely off every single time. So this is just a fun video I thought I would do. Like I said, it's just my opinion. If you guys disagree, it's 100% okay with me. But anyways, let's get into the video here. Starting off at number 7, in last place, we have the not surprising Ottawa Senators. So I do think this is where most people are going to put the Senators. I don't really think they're going to finish anywhere else but 7th, barring some like crazy thing where one team has just like a really bad matchup against a team where they're playing them like 10 times or anything like that. That aside, I really just don't think the Ottawa Senators are going to finish anywhere but last place. But that being said, I do think they're going to be a fairly competitive team. I don't think they're going to be that far behind everyone else. I like their additions in the offseason. I like that they added Matt Murray. I do think that's an improvement on Craig Anderson, and I think Matt Murray is still a pretty good goaltender, and also he does have those cup rings as well, which could help the Ottawa Senators and help kind of teaching those young guys. I think that'll be really helpful for the young players. And then they also added Dodonov and Galchenyuk, which I think will help them in terms of scoring a little bit more. And just recently they added Stefan from the Coyotes and Paquette from the Lightning, and I think those players will help them out as well. I mean, they have Tkachuk and Shabbat, and those players are absolutely fantastic. I think, like I said, Murray and net is going to be fairly good as well. And then they also have Stützle coming in as well, who has played really well in the World Juniors so far. So I do think they're going to be a fairly good team in future seasons, very much so. Like I said, I do have them finishing in 7th place, so we'll see how it goes for them. Now on to 6th place, we have the Winnipeg Jets. And I do want to quickly say as well is I think from 6th place to 1st place, I do think it's going to be really tight. Like I think it's going to be super tight, especially the top 4. The top 4, I think it's going to be like literally a separation of like 5 points or something like that. I think it's going to be very close for those teams, and kind of a few reasons why I don't think the Winnipeg Jets are going to do that well this season. We saw it in the playoffs. Winnipeg doesn't really have a lot of depth. Once they really lost their top guys, they really just completely lost the series against the Flames. It wasn't really even close after that. And then on top of that, their defense as well. I know their defense was fairly good last year, but I still don't really have a ton of confidence in that as well. I do like Connor Hellebuyck a lot. I think he's a fantastic goalie. Obviously, he won the Vezina this year, but is he really going to have back-to-back Vezina seasons? I'm not really too sure. I'm not overly counting on it. And with how tight the schedule is, they're going to have to rely on their backup a lot, and I'm not really confident in Brossoit. I like his name a lot. I think it's a really fun name to say, but I don't know how confident I am in Brossoit. If Connor Hellebuyck has another fantastic year, they can easily make the playoffs. But like I said, I'm not really sure if that's going to happen again. But that aside, I do like the addition of Stastny. I like having a good second-line center for Laine. I know Laine kind of always has complained about playing with little and not really having a good second line center. Stastny's definitely going to fix that for them. They're going to have a great 1-2 punch down the middle, and I do think Laine is going to have a really good year this year as well. I think last season he kind of improved his playmaking abilities, and I think he's going to score a lot of goals this year while even still having that playmaking ability. So I do think Laine is going to have a fairly good season, and I think if Laine has a good season, as well as their top line as well, and then if Hellebuyck has another Vezina season, like I said, they totally could finish top 3, but just right now, I don't overly see that happening. And in 5th place, we have a team that, in my opinion, is a little bit overhyped, and that might be just my bias coming through, but it's the Montreal Canadiens. I think the additions they made in the offseason is definitely going to help them for sure. I really like the Allen trade. I think that is a great addition for them because not only, like I said, is a backup really important this year with the shortened schedule and the condensed schedule where you're going to have multiple back-to-backs, it's also going to help Carey Price be rested and be probably a little bit better than he has in seasons past because they haven't had a great backup goalie for Carey Price, and they've had to play him a ton. So if they do end up making the playoffs, they're going to have a well-rested Carey Price, and that's kind of one reason why I think they did so well in the playoffs this year. Not saying it was just Carey Price, but it was a reason that a well-rested Carey Price is really good at hockey still. So with having Allen, you have a goaltender who's still pretty good. Like, he's a good backup goalie, so you can have him have confidence in playing him and having confidence in winning those games that you are playing him, and then resting Carey Price as well. It's going to be really helpful for the Canadiens. And I do like the addition of Toffoli as well. I think that's going to help their goal scoring. But honestly, other than that, like, I don't really see the Domi Anderson trade being overly fantastic. It might work out really well for the Canadiens. I might be completely wrong on that, but I don't really think it's that big of an addition. And one thing as well about the Canadiens is they did finish 24th last year. Like, they had a really good playoffs. I'll say that for sure. They had a great, 10-game segment where they played super, super well against Pittsburgh. They just absolutely dominated them, and they played really well against Philadelphia as well. They really held their own against Philadelphia. Kotkaniemi and Suzuki looked absolutely fantastic in the playoffs, and I do think Suzuki will have a really good year this year. We'll see how well Kotkaniemi does, if he'll kind of continue that 10-game segment, or if he'll kind of go back to being just okay like he was in the regular season. But either way, I feel like a lot of people are looking at that 10-game segment of Montreal and seeing how well they did in the playoffs and thinking that's going to carry over into this season. And I'm not sure really how much that's actually going to happen. For me personally, I kind of look at that 71-game segment before and go, that kind of seems like that's probably more what the team is. Although I do think they're going to be better than last season because of their additions. I just don't think they're going to be that much better. Like, I've seen some people say like they're going to be first in the Canadian division or like top 3, and I just don't really see it personally. And now we're at number 4, so this is going to be the playoff line. These are the teams that I think are going to be in the playoffs. At number 4, we have the Vancouver Canucks. I know that can be kind of controversial because of the fact of how much stuff they lost, how many players they lost in the offseason. You know, they lost Markstrom, Tanev, Toffoli, Stetcher, Levo. Like, they lost a ton of players in the offseason, but I do think they did their best to kind of replace those players as well. They didn't really replace every single player because they really can't, but I do think they did their best to replace those players, and they really did have to lose Markstrom. They really just couldn't keep Markstrom because of what he was asking for. He wanted a no movement clause, and with the no movement clause meant that he couldn't be exposed in the Seattle expansion draft, so that means they would have to expose Demko, and you're not exposing Demko. You literally just can't expose Demko, so they really just had to let Markstrom go, but I think they did a pretty good job in replacing Markstrom. They got Holtby. I know Holtby didn't have a great season last year, but I do think he's still a pretty good goaltender, and I think that tandem of Holtby and Demko will be pretty good. And they also hosed Vegas, picking up Nate Schmidt for like basically nothing. They knew Vegas was in a really vulnerable spot, and they took advantage of Vegas signing Pietrangelo, and they got Nate Schmidt, and I think that's going to help them out a lot as well. So like, they didn't replace everyone, but I do think they did a fairly good job at replacing as much as they could. So I really just don't think they're going to be that bad or as bad as some people are thinking. I mean, they're a really, really fun team. They got a lot of young players who are a lot of fun, like Pedersen, like Besser, like Horvat, and Quinn Hughes. They're a great young team, and I think they're going to be pretty good. The only thing that I'm kind of concerned about is their defense. I'm not really too sure how good that defense is going to be. I'm not really sure how much Schmidt is going to help out on that defense, if that extra year of Quinn Hughes is really going to help out that much, because their defense really wasn't that great from what I saw last year. They really let Markstrom hang out to dry on a lot of nights. So we'll have to see how much better that defense gets. If it does get a lot better, I do think they'll be pretty good, and they'll probably be in that 4th or maybe 3rd spot. If that defense fails, I do think they could move down a couple of spots. Now, in 3rd place, I'm going to be having the Edmonton Oilers. Now, I do think the Edmonton Oilers did really good in the offseason. They picked up a lot of depth. They fixed their relationship with Puljujarvi, so I think that'll be really helpful as well. It looks like they finally kind of have some depth around McDavid and Draisaitl. They have some actual players around those guys. So I do think they improved their forward depth really good this offseason, and I think that forward depth will be really helpful for them. But I do kind of have a few concerns with Edmonton. The injury to Klefbom is going to hurt them a lot. I like that they added Barrie. I think Barrie will have a better season than he did last season. I think he just had a really, really off season with the Maple Leafs, and he still did fairly well with the Leafs, not really defensively, but offensively, he really kind of kicked it into high gear when Sheldon Keefe took over. So I think he'll have a better season this year with the Edmonton Oilers, and then they also added Slater Cuckoo as well, just for a little bit of defensive depth. The main kind of issue that I have with the Edmonton Oilers is their goaltending. I don't really mind Koskinen. I'm not really a huge fan of him for some reason. I don't really know what it is, but I know he had a good season last year, but for some reason I still don't really think he's that good in my head for some reason. But really, my main issue is with Mike Smith. I don't like that re-signing of Mike Smith. I'm sure that they were in on Holtby and Markstrom as well, but they just couldn't get either of them. So they re-signed Mike Smith, and I'm just not really a huge fan of that. I'm not really super confident in Mike Smith. I know he has his good games for sure, and he has his good stretches, but he just doesn't really inspire confidence in me. But if Mike Smith can play well for this season, I do think they could probably finish in 1st place pretty easily. I mean, when you have McDavid and Draisaitl, you can pretty much finish first place. They can pretty much carry your team, although I do have them finishing in third place. And now on to number 2, we have the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, the Toronto Maple Leafs are my team, so I'll probably go a little bit more in depth with them than I would with any other team, just because, I know them the best. But with the Toronto Maple Leafs, they did have to sacrifice some depth in the offseason because of cap issues. They basically had to dump both Andreas Johnsson and Kasperi Kapanen for cap issues, but the return that they got on both players was pretty good. With Andreas Johnsson, they got back Joey Anderson. Now, I had never heard of Joey Anderson before that trade, I'll be honest, but with what I've seen from scouts and what the Maple Leafs are saying as well, it looks like he could be a fairly good player, and it looks like the Maple Leafs want to play him, and they want him in the lineup. So hopefully that's a pretty good return for Andreas Johnsson. And then with Kasperi Kapanen, they got a first-round pick for Kasperi Kapanen, and I like Kasperi Kapanen. I think he's a really good player. He's really fast. He's good on the penalty kill, but he's not worth a first-round pick. He's not worth a 15th overall pick. That was just a weird move from Jim Rutherford. I don't know why he did that. So I think for their cap dumps, they did pretty well. And then for kind of replacing them, they added a lot of depth players for really cheap. They added Joe Thornton and Wayne Simmons, which are, yes, I know they're older players and they aren't in their prime anymore, but I still think they probably could be fairly decent, or at least fairly good. They'll be toughening up that bottom 6, which I think will be really helpful for the Leafs. And then on defense, they did lose Barrie, which I know a lot of Leaf fans would be happy about. A lot of Leafs fans weren't really a huge fan of Barrie. I didn't really overly mind him. He had a lot of defensive blemishes, which, that's pretty much every single Leafs defenseman for the past few years here. But he did kind of pick up once Babcock left. He did start playing a lot better once Babcock left. I think the main reason why people hated Barrie so much, or at least Leaf fans hated Barrie so much, is because it was the Kadri trade. If they didn't trade him for Kadri and they just got him in the offseason or something like that, I don't think people would hate him as much. But because they traded Kadri for him, that really created a high standard for him, and that he had to play really well from the get-go, and he just didn't. So it was a little bit unfortunate for him. But with him being gone, they also lost Cody Ceci, which I know a lot of Leaf fans would also be happy about. Personally, I'm also kind of happy about that one. I'm not a huge fan of Cody Ceci. He always misses the net by like 20 feet. It's crazy how bad of a shot he has. It's mind-blowing. But anyways, even mid-season though, when Cody Ceci went down, the Leafs really struggled on defense, but they did add some pieces as well. They added Brody, which I think could be a really good add. Hopefully that works out. Hopefully it doesn't really end up like Tyson Barrie did, and it actually works out really well. And then they also added Bogosian as well, which I'm not really quite sure how much he's going to play, but the games he does play, I think it'll be really helpful. He'll really toughen up that back end. They only really have Jake Muzzin to kind of prompt that big guy, big strong guy on defense who will hit you if you're coming at him. So I think with Zach Bogosian as well, I don't really think he's a great defenseman from what I've seen. I know he played really, really well in Tampa, but is that the kind of Zach Bogosian that we're going to see? Or was he the Zach Bogosian before that? Who kind of really knows? And then they also have Lettinen coming over as well from Europe, and we'll see kind of how well he does. It also looks like they want him in the lineup as well. But they just have a ton of depth and a ton of extra guys on the roster, which will be really helpful for them because of the taxi squad. It was actually really good planning by Kyle Dubas to bring in all these players and kind of foresee that there was going to be a taxi squad. Dell is another addition that's really, really helpful for that taxi squad. I think that was a really smart move, adding Dell. But with their forward and defense, they just have so many guys that I really just don't know who's going to play. Maybe they'll just swap out people like almost every single night because of how squashed that schedule is. So I'm really kind of interested to see how the Leafs will deploy their lineup this season. I think it's going to be really, really interesting because of that taxi squad as well. I think that's going to really, really help them in kind of deploying their lineup. I think they might even go like 11 forward, 7 defensemen on some nights. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do. But really kind of like my main concern is with that depth that they added, is that going to really help them in the playoffs? Because I do think they're going to make the playoffs. I can't really see them missing the playoffs, to be honest. If they did, it's going to be just a huge disappointment for the Leafs. It's going to be massive. The only really way I feel like they're going to miss the playoffs is if they play really, really poorly against Montreal, which very well could happen because they do have 10 games against Montreal. They play really bad against them and they lose like 6 of them. They very well could miss the playoffs and it would be a huge disaster for the Leafs. But anyways, like I said, I don't really see them missing the playoffs. So I'm interested to see with their additions how much that's going to help them in the playoffs. If it's really going to help them in the playoffs. Because that's kind of like the main focus at this point. Because like most Leafs fans, all they want to see is them just make it past the first round. So if those additions do help in the playoffs, then it'll be fantastic. But I guess we'll just have to see if that's how it works out. And then who I think will finish first in the division is the Calgary Flames, who I'm wearing right now. I think they made a lot of good additions in the offseason. if you want to know who they added in the offseason, you can basically just take what I said when I said who was out of Vancouver, just take that part of the video and put it here, because that's basically who they added. They added Markstrom, Tanev, Levo, Domingue. Like, they basically just added the Vancouver Canucks, or the people who left the Vancouver Canucks. So I do like those additions a lot. I do like Markstrom replacing Talbot. I think that's a huge upgrade in net. They did also lose Brody and Hamonic, but they did bring in Tanev, so that kind of helps a little bit as well. And I do also really like the addition of Levo. I really like Levo as a player. I think he's a really good depth guy. He's really hardworking, and I do wish he had more time in Toronto. I wish he played a little bit more in Toronto. And I like the Domingue addition as well because of the taxi squad. Once again, they need to have one goalie on the taxi squad, so I like that third addition, or that third goalie, adding in Domingue. I think that'll be really helpful for them as well. If one of Riddick or Markstrom goes down, or even if Riddick doesn't play well, they could just bring in Domingue. We'll have to see kind of what they do there. But either way, I do like the Flames kind of roster a lot. The only kind of issue, like, I like their goaltending, I like their defense. I think their defense is solid. The only issue is kind of their forwards and how well that top line is going to produce. And I think that's really just been the main question in Calgary for a little while now, is that top line, how really good is it? Because they had a really good season 2 years ago, but last season it really wasn't as good, and they haven't really been that great in the playoffs either. So if they can kind of step it up and play really well like they played 2 years ago, and then keep that going in the playoffs, I do think the Flames have a really, really good shot at making it far in the playoffs, but I guess we'll just have to see about that top line. Like I said, that's really the only main concern for me. So yeah, anyways, those are my predictions. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Who do you think is going to place where? Like I said, this is completely my opinion, so if you think I'm completely wrong, I'm down for that. I probably am, to be honest with you, so I'd like to see what you guys think. Anyways, if you guys like the video, make sure to leave a like and make sure to subscribe for more hockey content. As the hockey season kind of ramps up, I'll probably talk about it a lot more. I'll obviously still have my jersey kind of stuff that I'm going to be talking about as well, but I'll probably implement a little bit more hockey as the hockey season kind of starts up here. Also, make sure to follow me on my Instagram and my Twitter at the Jersey Zone YT on Instagram and at the Jersey Zone on Twitter. Links are in the description down below. But like I said, that's it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.